The roar of the battlefield fades, the dust settles, and the uniforms exchange for civilian clothes. But for countless veterans, the war is far from over. It simply changes its address. The echoes of combat, when the war comes home, explores this insidious truth, dissecting how the intense, life-altering experiences of armed conflict refuse to stay confined to distant lands, and instead insidiously follow soldiers back to their living rooms, their bedrooms, and the quiet corners of their minds. This isn't about physical wounds, though those are undeniable. It's about the invisible shrapnel embedded in the psyche, constantly re-triggering the fight-or-flight response, distorting perception and turning everyday life into a new, unseen theater of operations. Imagine a veteran, let's call him John, sitting in his seemingly safe suburban home. The gentle hum of the refrigerator suddenly morphs into the distant thrum of a helicopter. A car backfiring down the street becomes the sharp crack of a sniper rifle. The smell of a backyard barbecue might conjure the acrid scent of burning diesel and cordite. These aren't fleeting memories. They are vivid, involuntary re-experiences, often accompanied by the same surge of adrenaline, terror, and hypervigilance that once kept John alive in a war zone. This constant state of alert, this perpetual anticipation of danger, where none objectively exists, is exhausting. It erodes trust, shatters peace, and transforms the very concept of home from a sanctuary into a place where the internal battle rages without respite. Irvin Yalom, in his exploration of existential psychotherapy, consistently emphasizes how our past shapes our present reality, and nowhere is this more tragically evident than in the post-combat veteran. Yalom often speaks of the human struggle with isolation and the search for meaning in the face of suffering. For veterans like John, the isolation is profound. How do you explain to a spouse or a friend that the rustling of leaves outside the window sounds like movement in the bushes before an ambush? How do you articulate the gut-wrenching guilt over decisions made under duress, or the haunting images of comrades lost? This inability to bridge the chasm between their lived reality and the civilian world's understanding creates a deep, impenetrable loneliness. They become foreigners in their own land, carrying a burden that no one else can fully see or comprehend. Yalom's patients frequently grapple with the feeling of being fundamentally alone in their suffering, a sentiment amplified exponentially for those returning from war, often bearing unspeakable truths. The echoes aren't just auditory or visual, they are emotional. The intense bonds forged in combat, born of shared peril and absolute reliance on one another, create a unique form of attachment. When these bonds are severed by death or distance, the grief is monumental and often unacknowledged by society. Veterans might feel an overwhelming sense of loss, guilt over surviving, or a gnawing resentment towards those who haven't experienced what they have. This complex tapestry of emotions, when left unaddressed, festers, contributing to feelings of anger, depression, and detachment. The hypervigilance translates into irritability, the inability to relax, and a hair-trigger temper, alienating loved ones who simply can't grasp the root cause. The very act of living a normal life can feel like a betrayal to those left behind on the battlefield. Furthermore, the moral ambiguities of war often lead to what is known as moral injury, a deep wound to one's conscience and moral compass. This isn't about fear, it's about transgression. Actions taken in the fog of war, often necessary for survival or order by command, can clash violently with a soldier's deeply held values. The veteran might grapple with intense guilt, shame, and a sense of having betrayed their own ethical code, or of having been betrayed by leaders or circumstances. This internal conflict, this echo of moral compromise, is excruciating. It can lead to self-condemnation, a loss of trust in institutions, and profound spiritual distress. Yalom's focus on confronting ultimate concerns, including the burden of responsibility and the search for integrity, directly speaks to the plight of individuals grappling with moral injury. The echo hears a constant whisper of what if, what I did, or what I saw, forever questioning the very core of who they are. Ultimately, the echoes of combat isn't merely a description of symptoms. It's an acknowledgement of the persistent, transformative power of extreme experience. It's about recognizing that for many who serve, the battle truly continues long after the guns fall silent, waged not with bullets and bombs, but with memories, emotions, and profound, often solitary, struggle to integrate their past into a present that struggles to understand it. Their homes become battlefields of the mind, and their quiet moments are anything but peaceful. The image of a returning war hero is often one of triumph, resilience, and unwavering strength. Parades are held, medals are bestowed, and a grateful nation offers its thanks. Yet beneath the crisp uniform and the stoic facade, an entirely different battle rages. One fought not with bullets and bombs, but with fractured memories, overwhelming anxiety, and a profound sense of detachment. Invisible wounds. The silent suffering beneath the hero's uniform confronts this harsh reality, peeling back the layers of public perception to reveal the devastating impact of post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, moral injury, and other insidious psychological scars that remain unseen by the casual observer. These aren't the kind of wounds that bleed or require stitches. They are the wounds that corrode the soul, silence the voice, and often alienate the very people trying to offer support. Consider the veteran Sarah, who served multiple tours. On the surface, she's back home, trying to reintegrate into civilian life. She holds down a job, attends family gatherings, and nods politely during conversations. But inside, Sarah is a prisoner of her own mind. A sudden loud noise might send her diving for cover, her heart pounding as if she's back in a firefight. Sleep offers no escape, as nightmares replay the most horrific moments of her service with vivid, agonizing clarity. She struggles to feel joy, finding herself emotionally numb, unable to connect with the laughter of her children or the warmth of her partner's embrace. This emotional constriction is a classic symptom of PTSD, a defense mechanism designed to protect the self from overwhelming pain, but which ultimately robs one of life's richness. Unlike a broken bone, which heals and leaves a visible scar, PTSD is a continuous, internal struggle that rewires the brain, keeping it locked in a perpetual state of alert, even when danger is long past. This brings us directly to Irvin Yalom's insights into the human struggle with anxiety and the fear of death. While Yalom often explores this through the lens of existential dread, for veterans, this anxiety is acutely magnified and tethered to concrete. Terrifying experiences, their proximity to death, their witnessing of horrific events, and a constant threat to their own lives have fundamentally altered their relationship with existence. The world no longer feels safe. Every moment carries the potential for disaster. This hypervigilance isn't a choice. It's a survival mechanism gone awry, making simple acts like driving a car or walking in a crowded place feel like life-threatening endeavors. Yalom's work on how individuals confront their own mortality and the fragility of life deeply resonates here. For veterans, this confrontation wasn't abstract. It was daily reality, and the memory of it continues to stalk them. Beyond PTSD, many veterans also grapple with moral injury, a concept that Yalom's work, with its focus on guilt, responsibility, and the search for integrity, helps us understand. Moral injury occurs when a person commits, fails to prevent, or witnesses acts that transgress deeply held moral beliefs. It's not about fear. It's about a profound violation of one's conscience. A soldier ordered to do something that feels morally wrong, or one who witnesses atrocities they were powerless to stop, carries a unique and agonizing burden. This can manifest as intense shame, self-condemnation, a profound sense of betrayal, either oneself or by others, and a loss of faith in their own goodness or in the justice of the world. Unlike PTSD, which is a fear-based response, moral injury is a guilt and shame-based wound to one's fundamental sense of right and wrong. It gnaws at the spirit, leading to social withdrawal, self-destructive behaviors, and even suicidal ideation as veterans struggle to live with unbearable inner conflict. The silence surrounding these invisible wounds is perhaps their most dangerous characteristic. Veterans are often conditioned by military culture to be tough, to suppress emotions, and to suck it up. This, combined with societal expectations of heroism, makes it incredibly difficult for them to admit they're struggling, let alone seek help. The fear of being seen as weak, broken, or crazy is a formidable barrier. Yalom often highlights the isolating nature of unshared suffering, and for veterans, this isolation is compounded by a perceived stigma. They become masters of concealment, presenting a facade of normalcy while their internal world crumbles. This silence ensures the suffering continues, perpetuating a cycle of pain that affects not only the veteran but also their families and communities. Ultimately, Recognizing these invisible wounds is the first step toward healing. It requires a shift in perspective, moving beyond superficial notions of heroism to acknowledge the profound and often devastating psychological cost of war. It demands empathy, understanding, and a willingness to engage with the uncomfortable truth that the greatest battles are often fought long after the last shot is fired, deep within the minds of those who served. Their silence isn't a sign of strength. It's often a cry for help, an echo of the silent suffering beneath the hero's uniform. The cessation of hostilities, the return home, cessation of immediate existential threat. These milestones, for many, mark the end of the war. Yet, for countless veterans, these very moments can usher in profound and disorienting crisis. The search for meaning, having lived through extraordinary circumstances, where purpose was often distilled into clear, immediate objectives like survival, protecting comrades, or executing a mission, the transition back to civilian life can feel like stepping onto an alien planet. The old markers of identity and purpose are gone, shattered by the crucible of combat, leaving a void that everyday life struggles to fill. Searching for meaning, reconciling the past with the future, explores this fundamental existential dilemma, a profound struggle to connect a fractured, traumatized past with a future that often seems devoid of the intense significance that once defined their very existence. Consider Alex, a veteran who served in a high-stakes combat unit. For years, his life was governed by a clear hierarchy, a defined mission, and the unwavering loyalty to his brothers and sisters in arms. Every action, every breath, held immediate consequence. Now, back home, the stakes feel trivial. The urgency of choosing between breakfast cereals or the mundane pressures of a desk job pale in comparison to the life or death decisions he once made. This stark contrast can lead to a pervasive sense of ennui, a deep, almost painful boredom that no civilian pursuit seems capable of alleviating. The meaning that was once inherent in his role as a soldier, the palpable sense of contributing to something larger than himself, is now absent. This isn't simply nostalgia for camaraderie. It's a desperate yearning for clarity of purpose that war, paradoxically, provided. The civilian world, with its nuanced complexities and often self-serving motivations, can seem utterly meaningless, leaving veterans feeling adrift, without an anchor in a calm but utterly uninspiring sea. This struggle resonates deeply with Irvin Yalom's core existential concerns, particularly the search for meaning in a universe that is indifferent to our existence. Yalom often highlights how humans grapple with creating or discovering purpose in a world inherently lacking it. For veterans, this challenge is intensified by their unique experiences. They've seen the raw, unvarnished brutality of life and death. They've witnessed humanity at its worst and perhaps at its most self-sacrificing best. These experiences strip away superficial illusions about life's inherent fairness or meaning, leaving them with a stark, often terrifying, realization of life's fundamental fragility and arbitrary nature. How does one build a future, invest in long-term goals, or engage in mundane pursuits when one has intimately known how quickly everything can be taken away? The pursuit of a new career, building a family, or simply finding happiness can feel hollow, insignificant, or even absurd in the shadow of what they've endured. Furthermore, the process of reconciling the past with future involves grappling with the difficult truth that the person who left for war is not the person who returned. The experiences have irrevocably changed them, and often the people around them haven't changed in the same way. This creates a disconnect, a feeling that they can no longer fully belong to the world they once knew. They carry memories and insights that set them apart, and this can lead to a profound internal conflict. How does one integrate the warrior self, capable of extreme violence and resilience, with the civilian self, expected to be docile and adaptable? This negotiation of identity is critical to finding new meaning. If they cling too tightly to the past, they cannot move forward. If they abandon their past entirely, they risk losing a vital part of who they have become. Yalom's emphasis on authenticity and the process of self-creation is particularly relevant here. Veterans must embark on a difficult journey of reauthoring their life narratives, integrating their war experiences into a coherent, meaningful new identity. The quest for meaning can manifest in various ways, sometimes constructively, sometimes destructively. Some veterans throw themselves into new causes, finding purpose in advocacy or service to others. Others might seek solace in self-medication, attempting to numb the existential angst. The challenge lies in helping them to see that meaning isn't always out there to be found, but often in here to be created. It requires a brave turning inward, confronting the void, and actively constructing a new framework of values and purpose. This is a difficult, often lifelong endeavor, but one that is essential for true healing and reintegration. Ultimately, searching for meaning, reconciling the past with the future, highlights that the journey home for a veteran is not just a physical one, but a profound spiritual and existential odyssey. It's about more than just managing symptoms. It's about finding a reason to live, to hope, and to thrive in a world that has been irrevocably altered by their experiences. It's about bridging the chasm between the soldier they were and the person they aspire to become, one meaningful step at a time. Returning from the crucible of war, many veterans find themselves paradoxically isolated, adrift in a sea of well-meaning but ultimately uncomprehending civilian faces. The loneliness of the brave. Isolation in a world that doesn't understand delves into this profound sense of alienation, a quiet suffering that can be as debilitating as any physical wound. It's not just about physical solitude. It's a deep, existential loneliness that stems from experiences too horrific, too unique, and too transformative for others to truly grasp. The chasm between their lived reality and civilian perception of normalcy becomes a barrier, trapping them in a silent, inner world where their most profound struggles remain unshared and often unacknowledged. Imagine Maria, a combat medic who witnessed unspeakable suffering and performed acts of extraordinary bravery under fire. Back home, her friends talk about office politics, vacation plans, or the latest TV show. When they ask, how was it? Maria finds herself speechless. How do you compress years of life or death decisions, the smell of burning flesh, the cries of the wounded, or the sheer terror of an ambush into a casual conversation? The words feel inadequate, even disrespectful, to the weight of her memories. She might try once or twice to share a fragmented story, only to be met with uncomfortable silence, polite nods, or a swift change of subject. This inability to communicate the depth of their experience, to truly be seen and understood, pushes veterans further inward. They learn quickly that it's often easier and less painful to simply remain silent. This silence, however, only deepens the well of their isolation. This phenomenon directly ties into Irvin Yalom's profound insights into existential isolation. Yalom posits that human beings are fundamentally alone in their existence, destined to live and die by themselves. While this is a universal truth, for veterans, this inherent isolation is acutely magnified by their unique experiences. They have confronted death, faced unimaginable moral dilemmas, and operated in a realm of intensity that most civilians will never touch. These experiences forge a worldview that is fundamentally different, creating a sense of being an outsider looking in. The everyday concerns of civilian life, which once held relevance, now seem trivial and remote, reinforcing the belief that no one can truly relate to what they've endured. Yalom's therapeutic approach often focuses on helping individuals confront and work through this fundamental isolation, recognizing that while it cannot be fully eradicated, it can be approached with courage and shared in the context of deep connection. For veterans, building such connections is exceptionally challenging precisely because of the unique nature of their experiences. The loneliness isn't just about sharing stories. It's about a disconnect in fundamental understanding. Veterans have lived by a different code, operated under extreme duress, and formed bonds forged in the crucible of shared survival. The concept of trust, for instance, is profoundly altered. In combat, trusting your comrades literally meant the difference between life and death. In civilian life, where stakes seem lower and motives more ambiguous, that intense, instinctual trust is difficult to transfer. This can lead to suspicion, a difficulty forming new deep relationships, and a sense that they are fundamentally different from those around them. Even within families, this creates strain. A spouse might feel shut out, unable to reach their partner, who seems encased in an invisible shield of solitude. Children might struggle to understand why a parent seems emotionally distant or prone to sudden outbursts. Furthermore, society's often romanticized or simplistic view of the hero can paradoxically contribute to this isolation. The expectation that veterans should simply be okay and quickly reintegrate ignores the profound internal transformations they've undergone. This pressure to perform normalcy, to fit neatly back into a pre-war mold, forces them to suppress their authentic selves and their true suffering. They become actors in their own lives, playing a role for a world that doesn't want to see the complexity or the cost of their service. This constant performance is emotionally draining and reinforces a belief that their real experiences are unacceptable or incomprehensible to others. Ultimately, the loneliness of the brave underscores that returning from war is not merely a geographical transition, but a deeply psychological and social one. It highlights the critical need for spaces and relationships where veterans can feel truly seen, heard, and understood without judgment. Breaking down this isolation requires empathy, patience, and a willingness from society to look beyond the uniform and recognize the profound, often solitary, battle being fought within. Until then, many heroes will continue their fight in quiet solitude, carrying the immense burden of experiences that set them apart, even when they are physically home. The moment a soldier sheds their uniform for the last time is often envisioned as a liberation, a return to normalcy. Yet, for countless veterans, this transition marks the beginning of an arduous and deeply confusing quest, the journey of reclaiming identity. Having spent years, sometimes decades, operating within a rigidly defined military structure, where purpose, belonging, and even self-worth were inextricably linked to their role as a warrior, the civilian world can feel like a rudderless ship in an unfamiliar sea. Reclaiming identity, from warrior to civilian self, delves into this profound struggle to shed the combat persona and rediscover, or even invent, who they are outside the confines of military service. It's not just about changing clothes. It's about fundamentally reshaping one's self-concept, values, and sense of purpose. Imagine David, a decorated Marine who thrived in the high-stakes environment of combat. His days were structured, his mission clear, and his identity as protector and leader was undeniable. Back home, he struggles to find a job that offers even a fraction of that purpose. The rigid discipline that made him an effective soldier now feels out of place in a casual office setting. The intense camaraderie, forged under fire, is missing in the superficial interactions of civilian life. David finds himself questioning, who am I if not a Marine? What is my value now? This existential void is a powerful driver of distress. The military provided a complete framework for living, how to dress, how to speak, how to behave, and what to prioritize. Stripped of this framework, many veterans feel a profound sense of loss, as if a core part of their being has been amputated. They are no longer defined by rank or unit. They are simply civilian, and often they don't even recognize that civilian self. This struggle aligns powerfully with Irvin Yalom's emphasis on authenticity and a continuous process of self-creation. Yalom often speaks of how individuals, throughout their lives, are tasked with constructing their own meaning and defining who they are, rather than simply accepting a pre-given identity. For veterans, this task is acutely challenging because their pre-given military identity was so deeply ingrained, so intensely lived, and often so profoundly impactful. The trauma of war, coupled with the abrupt removal from military culture, forces an accelerated and often painful reevaluation of self. The warrior self, resilient, decisive, hypervigilant, and perhaps desensitized to certain horrors, may be ill-suited for a peaceful civilian existence, yet it's the self that saw them through unimaginable challenges. The dilemma becomes, how much of that warrior self should be retained, and how much must be shed to thrive in a different reality? The act of trying to simply go back to normal is often a denial of profound transformation they have undergone, leading to internal conflict and a sense of inauthenticity. The process of reclaiming identity also involves grieving the loss of the military self and the life associated with it. This isn't just about missing friends. It's about mourning a whole way of life, a sense of belonging, and a clear-cut purpose. Many veterans experience a sense of limbo, feeling neither fully military nor fully civilian. They might struggle with finding new values to guide them, new communities to belong to, or new skills to leverage in a different context. The skills honed in combat, survival, rapid decision-making under pressure, extreme vigilance, are not always directly transferable or valued in the civilian job market, further complicating the search for a meaningful role. This disjunction between acquired competence and civilian opportunity can erode self-esteem and exacerbate feelings of purposelessness. Moreover, the reintegration process requires a conscious effort to integrate their past experiences, no matter how traumatic, into a coherent new narrative. It's not about forgetting the warrior. It's about understanding how that warrior self can inform, but not dominate the civilian self. This might involve finding new ways to channel their discipline and courage, developing new interests, and forging new relationships that acknowledge both their past service and their present aspirations. Yalom's therapeutic approach would encourage an honest reckoning with the givens of their experience, the trauma, the loss, the moral ambiguities, and then empowering them to build a new sense of self that incorporates these truths rather than denying them. This is a journey of active self-creation, where the veteran becomes the author of their own next chapter, writing a story of resilience, adaptation, and renewed purpose. In essence, reclaiming identity is a silent, ongoing battle fought within the minds and hearts of veterans long after they leave the battlefield. It is a profound existential challenge, demanding immense courage to confront who they were, mourn what they lost, and bravely forge who they are meant to be in a world that often struggles to comprehend their transformative journey. It's about finding their civilian self, not by forgetting the warrior, but by integrating that powerful experience into a new, authentic existence. If this journey resonated with you, don't let the conversation end here. Subscribe to our channel now and hit the notification bell so you never miss our deep dives into human experience. We're committed to bringing you more powerful stories and insights that spark reflection and foster understanding. Join our community. Your engagement helps us shine a light on crucial topics and support those who need it most. Let's keep exploring the unseen battles and the paths to hope together.